Hello everyone, welcome to the Northland Artist Conversation. My name is Mark Kelly. I am your host, if you will, your tour guide on all things artistic and creative throughout Northland. Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We're in the middle of winter, and it's obviously that time of year where it's quite a bit cold, very windy, and then it's cold and windy. So let's warm you guys up with a little bit of an interesting podcast. I'm going to flick to my camera here. Today's guest is actually our first repeat guest. Ashley Ellis, Ash, had been on the podcast late October, early November last year, and I happened to just sort of bump into her and have a chat, and she said that she had picked up a new creative expression, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So she told me a little about it, and I was like, you need to come back on the podcast. So she was like, okay, cool. We booked her in, and happy days. And it was just, thinking about, so she was an artist in terms of like painting and stuff like that. I highly recommend going and watching that first podcast because it's very interesting. You'll see a very different side of Ash. I won't say too much, but if you watch that one and then come back and watch this one, you'll notice a very different person. And the person that we had on the podcast today was, a breath of fresh air. Super cool. Just lovely to talk with. So I'm going to stop talking so you guys can start ripping into it. Let's sit down and have a conversation with Ash Ellis. Producer Andrew says it's good. That's fine. That's cool. Wow, Ashley. Ash. We'll just go with Ash, because I think last time it was Ashley. But less
Ash
form.
is fine.
It's a bit less formal this time around, because obviously we know each other now.
Round two.
Round two. So welcome back to the Northland Arts Conversation. I'm really stoked to have you here. You are our first repeat guest.
What led to that?
What led to that? You telling me that you're doing different stuff.
Okay. At the comic book festival.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly it. So for the listeners and viewers at home, you've been on the podcast before. You were on, late last year?
I can't remember. It would have been around October or November. Yeah. Early November, perhaps.
October, November. We had you on. We obviously talked a great deal about you discovering painting during the lockdown. And then living in the middle of nowhere. And then how you'd sort of managed to end up being a resident at the Quarry Arts Gallery. Is that right?
Yeah. Quarry Arts Centre. Yep.
Quarry Arts Centre. You're not there. You have since left the Quarry Arts Centre.
No, I'm still there.
Still there?
Yeah. Studio 5.
Studio 5.
Yep.
Oh, but you no longer live there.
No longer live there.
No longer live there. So obviously the whole reason for getting you back in is I think it's safe to say there's been a fair bit of change since we talked in.
Yes, fairly standard.
Late October, November last year.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that a bit later on. I guess I'm curious to know how the art sort of journey went, because it's been 9 months now, and you'd only just sort of recently undertaken the journey into art. Yep. So the last 9 months, even with your painting, a lot's happened.
Yep.
You had an exhibition.
I had an exhibition, the first exhibition with paintings.
I know.
Yeah, no, that was very cool.
What led to that, and sort of, how does one sort of prepare for that? Because the reason I ask is we've had other I say crafty people, good with their hands in terms of like clay sculpting, and art, and some of them haven't been able to cross that barrier of going from my work is for sale versus exhibiting, because it is quite a big leap.
Right.
There's a huge amount of confidence that has to come forward out of it.
Yeah, okay.
So how was that for you?
Well, I found that it's really just having the opportunity to exhibit. So, for instance, me being at the quarry means there's a gallery right there.
Yes.
And all I had to do was reach out to gallery manager Hannah, she's been on here before, and just say, hey, I'm really keen to have an exhibition. And then she tells me when the next free slot is, and I just sign up for then.
Right.
So that was about 6 months or 7 months ahead of time.
Oh, wow.
So I already had that booked in prior to our last interview. And then I had to wait a few months before I could actually exhibit.
Yeah.
So for me, that was helpful for the discipline and the industry to work towards a date that was locked in place.
Right.
And that was with my mentor, Mike. That was it was called Ether Reality. And he had his landscape paintings on one half of the exhibition hall, and then I had my surrealist paintings on the other half. And it was quite a cool contrast.
It's very, very different because you've got this... I get more of a traditional style.
For him, the landscape tonalist.
Yeah. And then on the other side was this Salvador Dali on acid.
Like highly chromatic. Modern, I suppose modern. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So very, very, very different styles.
Yep.
But when we talked last time, you were sort of getting into the habit of trying to do a painting a day.
Yes. Yep.
When it came time to exhibit, you obviously would have had quite a large body of work.
Yes, I did. Yep.
How does one go about selecting what actually goes up? Because what we saw, so my son Sean and I, we went, we had a look, very impressed. Sean purchased his first piece of art. He was very proud of himself.
Wholesome. Yeah.
Very proud of him. And he used his own pocket money too. He didn't borrow $10 off me. So how does an artist go through and select a collection?
Okay, well, I knew the space that I had available, because obviously I've been around that gallery a lot. And I made all of the frames myself, or me and Max made them together.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of exposure to each painting. Like, it took quite a while to make each frame. So that was a lot of time spent with each painting, and I could kind of see a lineage. As we were doing, I was laying them all out on the floor, and I could see which ones worked or flowed nicely into each other.
Okay.
Dependent on like when it was made. So remember, they're all astrological theme.
Yeah. And they've all got the information on the back.
Yep.
And
so
those.
it was kind of like a lineage of the start of the year flowing through towards the end of the year, and there was like almost a natural energetic flow through the paintings.
Right.
And I could see that through my work, and that's kind of the order that I put them up in.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it made it a lot simpler to organise.
Now obviously we talked about this at sort of a decent length last time.
Yes.
Was how on the back of your artwork there are the astrological symbols which relate to... there's two parts to it, right?
Well, the sun, like for instance, right now we're in Cancer season, so everyone who's Cancer sun sign, born in Cancer, they'll be celebrating their birthday now.
Yep.
And then for me, I also put Moon, Mercury, Venus on there, which were... Obviously, the moon moves into a new zodiacal sign every 2.5 days, so that's very quick, fleeting, changing, what makes us all quite individual.
Yes.
And then, the Mercury and Venus are to do with different parts of one's experience. So for me, all of these different energies, whether it's from Venus or Jupiter or Saturn or Mercury or the Sun, is all feeding into my experience going into the painting. And so when I look at this painting, I can feel these, like when I stay, so for instance... just more astrological jargon, which I could elaborate upon.
Go for gold.
So we've got...
Let's get into it.
Yeah, we've got the artsy related aesthetic kind of planets. We've got Venus, which is to do with the aesthetic. This is like, oh, these colours look beautiful. I love that brush stroke. This is when you go to the art museum and you're like, this one, I really like how they've painted that flower. Then you've got Neptune, which is when you sit with the painting and you let it almost open up and envelop around you, and it feels like it takes you somewhere else, like a more spiritual, transcendental experience. That's Neptune.
Right.
And so you've got the Venus, which is the surface but like beauty of it that immediately hits you when you walk in the room. Then you've got the Neptune where you stay with it and it opens up to you this is, can't actually remember the question I'm answering.
Let's go.
But very
we'll
Neptune.
just go on way weird.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think with my art, I've got a strong Neptunian web in my own personal chart. So my artistic journey is through the lens of Neptune. The way that I perceive is through the lens of Neptune. And so I think that when I'm organising an exhibition, or when I'm organising my painting day to day, or when I'm setting up future thematic exhibitions, I'm imagining it's through this whole lens of I want to take people somewhere else and I want to fully immerse them in an experience.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to do in my previous exhibition.
I was going to say, basically when, yours isn't the type of art where people walk into it and just hit by it straight away. It's one of those, you're the type of artist where you'll put something out for people to see and you really need to sit with it for a while because you'll look at it and you'll go, why does a cow have 3 eyes? I have no idea. And what's this flower poking out of its head? But then when you actually sort of spend a bit more time with it, you go, oh, I see what she was trying to do.
And what, for me, even if it was only one other person external to myself who was moved in some way by that art, or who felt something, not just saw something, but felt something, that is that is excellent. For me, that's done, that's fulfilled.
So with you building this exhibition based off the astrological symbols?
Yeah, that's the influence of it, I'd say.
That's the influence.
Yeah.
Were there any, I guess, so my question's going to be a bit of a deep one.
Yep.
When you're reviewing this work and you're going, okay, I like how all of this makes sense. Is there anything where you're looking at it and you go, yeah, something really bad happened that day, and I remember that. Are you sort of looking at it from a level of depth? I remember I went for a walk at Whananaki when I did this painting, and I can see the influence there. And this day I found out a cat died. I don't know, but something where it's like
an uncomfortable emotion.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. Do you put an exhibition together based solely on the astrological signs and how it overarches? And when you're looking at it, are you going, these are not just the positive emotions. These are a mixture of emotions, a plethora of emotions.
Yes, to some degree, because it's almost like, when you're in high school and you've got an English exam and you kind of like bullshit your way through, excuse my language.
Confidently assert yourself through the exam, yes.
You know what I mean? You can, with the English, they're find this meaning or this theme in this passage, and depending on how poetic or eloquent or twisted you want to become, you can kind of just wrap your way around that, you know what I mean? So for me, I put the paintings, I put them on the wall, and everything's got its astrological significance. There's not one day that one could experience where there's just no astrology. That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
So even if it's an uncomfortable place, or one painting looks particularly darker or more sinister or less chromatically enticing than the others, it's still got something, it's still communicating something.
Right.
You still look at it, and even if it stands out, that's almost more stark than the others. There's a contrast of emotions or experience that has applied.
Okay.
And that's something to talk about, or that's something to pinpoint out. With the charcoal that I wrote around all the paintings, there's something that when I went through and just reviewed my paintings on the wall again, words come into my head, or lessons or some insights that I've had around the time of that painting, and I just pop them on the wall. And then if people happen to magically look at the painting and then read the words and something makes sense, even if they can't logically understand why it makes sense, that's kind of, they're joining me in that flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
So there's nothing that I would eject out because it was an uncomfortable emotion. I feel like that's just as interesting as a positive emotion.
Absolutely. And as human beings, we express the full range of emotions.
Yeah, we're here to experience emotions, right?
Some of us don't. Not saying I don't. I have a full range of emotions, thank you very kindly. Going back to when, so last time you came in, you brought some art with you, and it was very cool.
I did, yes.
How would you say your evolution from the original art that you brought in through to what you're putting out now, how do you think the two. What do you think about the journey between the two? Like, because as artists, we always grow, right?
Yes.
We always learn.
Yeah.
I can look back on my first podcast and I can think, holy shit, I was way out of my depth and I was very uncomfortable, and you can probably see that. Whereas now I'm certainly a lot more comfortable with it. But, looking back on when you sort of first started and you first got that residence and you had that moment, you were like, I'm actually going to make a living out of this. This is going to be my calling.
Yeah.
Versus where you are now.
Yeah.
How diametrically opposed are those two times in your life?
Okay, well, the art form that I spend most of my time practicing now is differed. So back then was the painting. Now I do... So there's 2 points. There's less painting now, but there's more tattooing and illustration work. But also with the painting's topics and subjects themselves, there's no less eyes. Remember my thing was there's always an eye in the painting?
Yes, a lot of eyes.
Yeah, there's barely any eyes in my work now, which is one main pivot that I've found has just come through my paintings at the moment.
Wow,
which is interesting. So now it's more, instead of going into the eye and then everything growing from around it, it's more the form and the posture and the body shape of the characters. And the colours have altered slightly as well, which is quite interesting. When I do paint, yeah.
What do you think's caused that?
I think because my attention has gone elsewhere slightly. There's something about the eye in my paintings when we first had the original interview where doing a painting a day, that was the whole purpose, it felt like, of my experience of my life then, was that. And it always started with the eye. It's like, I'm here and I'm watching you and I'm connected and I'm with this painting right now and I'm giving you all of myself.
Yep.
It's almost, this is just intuitive. But now when I'm doing a painting, I sketch it up and it's more illustrating what's going on outside of the scenes beyond the painting world. So the painting is not the primary thing anymore. The painting is almost, I use it almost like a journal to map where I'm currently at in my journey thus far.
Okay.
So there's like a different attitude to what the painting is used for or what it represents.
So essentially we've gone from having a sense of urgency because one a day, I don't know if I could do a podcast today.
True, yes.
Be a hell of a challenge.
Yeah.
Don't know how producer Andrew would feel about that. No, he's laughing at me. That's a no. Going from delivering one a day to essentially something where you're delivering a more thoughtful piece.
It's been difficult. I've had to adapt. Going from that one a day, this is my whole purpose, doing this painting once a day, to now I went through a period of being like, am I losing my interest in painting? What's happening? Is this a depression? Is this a symptom of like losing this core fire that I felt originally? And I was wondering, I was like, what's changing? Like, I'm doing what my mentor Helen, I mentioned Helen, she said follow your bliss, and so it was painting day, that was my bliss. But then my priorities and where I was looking and paying attention has been changing, and even just that change, everything changes and we have to adapt to change, but adapting to that particular change was really difficult because I felt almost lost. Like, painting a day was structure, it was discipline, it was grounded, and I knew exactly what I was doing when I woke up every morning. But then when suddenly I'm not doing that, it felt like more floaty, like more watery, and my feet weren't planted on the ground, and that was quite a interesting emotional and intellectual state to navigate. What do I do with my time? And so it kind of branched out into clay, a lot more clay work.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Clay?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. This is new for me, but yeah, go on.
So I've got an exhibition in mind that I would love to execute that I've started working on. I want to make an army of clay figures, and they're about 1 meter. So the smallest is about 1 meter tall.
Right.
And they're just these hollow, coiled out forms with these interesting shapes and faces, but just making them so that they don't collapse while I'm making them is the challenge. I just want to see how big can I make these clay sculptures and make them work. And I want to line them all around the exhibition hall like a perimeter of these armies, and people to walk in and they're just confronted by all these things around the perimeter staring at them, and they're all different glazed elemental colours. And I want to do the same charcoal thing but more refined, less chaotic, and more structured in some kind of geometrical pattern on the wall. I think that would be quite interesting. I could just see it, but I just have to execute. It's quite expensive,
Well,
all the clay.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a couple of potters on here before. We
True.
had the husband and wife team, Rod and Wendy Cunliffe from Rayburn House.
Oh yeah.
Both very, very different in their hang on. Both very different in terms of throwing the clay.
Oh, interesting.
There you go. That's a word I remember there, Andrew.
Nice.
Producer Andrew. Throwing the clay.
Some jargon.
Yeah, no, yeah. Busting out the lingo. See, listeners and viewers, I do remember shit sometimes. So, you know, that I'd highly recommend going and have a chat with those guys because they're pretty cool. They've done some amazing things.
Cool.
So we've gone from less of a focus in the painting into sort of diversifying now because you a bit of pottery, as you said, a bit of tattooing, illustration, but you're also doing some stuff with fabric.
Yeah, I've just started.
As well.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, could you just maybe suck at one thing, please? That'd be great. Can you not be so talented at 5?
No, well,
how rude.
The interesting thing is that I was kicked out of all of the sewing classes at high school. That was the only time I've touched a sewing machine was in textile work, right?
Yep.
And so got kicked out of there. I was told I could not attend those classes because I kept breaking the sewing machines. I have no idea how. It was just trying to thread the machine. It's nothing too apparently complex. And I went through 3 machines, and at this point I wasn't welcome back. Yeah. And that was the last time I touched a sew. Honestly, right.
Yeah. Benina does not want you.
Yes. And so from this, I where I'm living with Max now, he's got a sewing machine. And so I was like, right, now is my chance to just give this another go. And I just started going to the Arthur's Emporium fabric shop and seeing the just walls covered in all these interesting fabrics and feeling textures. And
yeah.
I was like, I'm going to try and make some stuff. So I made tapestries. I got into growing medicinal herbs and from seeds. That's one of my current little hobbies.
Yep.
And then so I made a big tapestry, a 2-meter tall tapestry of a chamomile plant, just with fabric. So I was going to make a big wall of different medicinal herb tapestries, just to keep that energy going, get these seeds germinating. And then I was like, wait, I could do solar tapestries, astrological tapestries, and then I was like, okay, there's so many tapestries one could do. So I was like, let's make some clothes. So I started learning how to make some clothes for myself. The next day I bought a big mannequin, so I had this. Now,
I've seen some of those photos on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
I have to say, they're pretty interesting.
Yeah.
They're pretty interesting. I don't mean interesting as in a word that I'm trying to say that sounds...
What interests you about them?
There was the one jacket that you'd done for your partner.
Yes, the black and white kind of.
That one.
Yeah.
That one for me was probably the most interesting out of all of them. There was I think a white jacket with it looked like a patch
just
on the back.
Just on a patch of a duvet on it. Yeah.
That's it. I've seen those 2 ones. They're sort of recently the ones popping off the top of my head, but I just found them so interesting because it's that all makes sense and it's very traditional in a lot of ways when you're looking at things, but then in some ways you've taken things and gone, I would have never have thought of that.
True. So what I'm doing at the moment, I've got that a big kind of linen coat. It's just a neutral colour. I've dyed it in iron oxide, which is what I dye my clay in. And so
iron oxide.
Yeah, it's rust.
Okay. So rust, right.
The coat is now kind of No, it's all right. It's I
feel dumb.
It's a diluted rust colour now.
Yeah.
And I've got into embroidery. So this fabric has gone from, it's very, very quick. Everything I just following what interests me changes very quickly. The tapestries to the clothing, and now I've got the clothing that I'm fully embroidering. So I've done, for instance, what I'm working on is a big tree with roots and the big foliage tree top going down the full length of a jacket, and it's going to take a long time, but I can see how I can make an original piece of clothing and then put my art on it, and I could put my figures from my paintings embroidered in.
Yep.
So it's, I think it's just working with different mediums and then cycling between them, and they'll eventually culminate together. All of my work eventually culminates, even if it seems so far left field.
Look, I'll be honest. you did the painting. There was the huge discipline there, and now you've got all of these other things that have come on.
Yes.
You could go, well, we've had the discipline focus here, and over here is ADD brain.
Oh, it's nuts. Like, yeah.
I was polite. I didn't say nuts.
But it keeps it interesting, though.
Yes, it
Don't
does.
get bored. You can't be bored.
No, you
know
can't.
What I mean? Yeah.
No, that's very true. So, I mean, the big thing for me when starting off on a new creative endeavor is how long will it last? Some creatives can do one medium and do it incredibly well and do it for years.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, I'm going to make sure I get his name right. He's a former guest, Sean McConnell. I'm going to be an arsehole. Sean, I'm really sorry. I've gotten your last name wrong. McDonald, thank you very much. Producer Andrew, always on the money. And what he does is he lives out past Dargaville. He lives towards the beach, Bailey's Beach, and he paints a lot of sunsets and like sunrises and that sorts of things, all from very different perspectives. But they're all they're so beautiful. I'd love to own one of them. They're amazing, and that's one thing that he does incredibly well. And he came from a bit of a darker past by his own admission. Whereas now you've got someone like yourself who started off very focused on the one thing and now you've diversified out. Why do you think you chose to essentially take that path and then hit the 5 forks in the road and go, this is like a choose your own adventure book and you just go down all of them?
Yeah, all at once.
Why not?
Skip between them.
I'll just clone myself.
Well, my immediate lens that I think through is the astrological lens.
Right,
so
okay.
I've got a Gemini ascendant, which a typical phrase associated with Gemini is
Serial killers.
No.
No, okay, right. Sorry, everyone.
I wouldn't just say that.
Yeah. Geminis,
all you
two-faced.
Geminis out there.
All you Geminis. Statistically, there are more Gemini serial killers than there are any other star sign. So if you're a Gemini, my bad. I don't know if that's true.
There's a whole field in astrology focusing on serial killers.
I have no doubt that there is. Of course there is. Yes.
So it's like, I can't remember the exact phrase, but it's pretty much like you dabble in lots of things, but you're not masterful in any one thing. But the thing with Gemini is they often can converse with a lot of different people and they have lots of skill sets all over the show because they've actually like dabbled and they've immersed themselves or they've found curiosity within each of these individual paths for short periods of time all over the place, and then they have this kind of like thin fabric that stretches very far and wide over a whole range of different fields. And so with that being my ascendant, I can see like this is why I'm interested in so many different things, and it's more getting to a point of becoming comfortable with dipping my toes in lots of different things and not thinking I have to do one thing and that's the only way I'll be successful as an artist. Because that's, for me, as my personality, that's quite limiting. I need to have the freedom to follow where I'm led with my interests and such.
Right, okay. So, jack of all trades, master of none.
That's the one that I was looking for.
You're welcome.
That's the one. Thank you.
You're welcome. Not a problem at all. I think that's much better than serial killer. Although they too also have to be jack of all trades as well. Producer Andrew's going, how the hell are we going to edit this shit? This is really bad.
He's got his head in his
He's got his
hands.
head in his hands going, I just can't say anything. This is the shit he does. It's all staying in. So because you're someone that... So I would say there's a natural curiosity and a bit of inquisition there, which probably what leads you to be so exploratory. Thinking, because obviously these new elements have only happened in the last 6 months.
Clay's been Since the painting time.
Since the painting time, okay.
But it's increased in intensity and frequency now.
Yep.
But yeah, the fabric is very fresh. The fabric has been literally the last month.
Right. Do you think that in the next 6 to 12 months that you'll be like, oh, look, suddenly I'm doing an insert new random thing here?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah, like I feel like if I book in to have another exhibition, I can imagine, say, like the clay figures I described before, but incorporating some kind of the text art, like a cloak around, or I don't know, something, or the tapestry being the wall hanging behind each of these figures. So it would be, instead of a single media artist potentially actually like being like a multimedia artist, and that's something that you can actually get. So when I pick a new art form, even if it's like relatively short term, say to like a 15-year painter or something, I really go hard with it. Like it's 100% of my focus and attention. It's all I think about is that new art form. So right now it's with the embroidery, but I'm already thinking how I can incorporate my art style or the things that people look at my art, they're like, oh, I can see this through all your mediums, into each of the new medium I work with. So it's almost the style or what makes up my style, and I'm just using these mediums to express that same energy or that same influence just through different mediums.
One of the organisations that proudly supports the Northland Artist Conversation is Creative Northland. I'm going to take just a moment to talk to you guys about it. Creative Northland have been absolutely vital in helping this project get off the ground through its infancy and all the way through to where we are now. We couldn't have done what we've done without their assistance. What we suggest is that if you're a creative person and you haven't heard of Creative Northland, we highly recommend that you reach out to them. Creative Northland, simply do a Google search. They're the top result. These guys are wonderful. They're all creatives in their own way, and they're all very, very well respected throughout the industry that they work in. They're very hardworking, absolutely committed and dedicated to helping the creative people throughout Northland, whether it be through simple things like starting up a project, all the way through to putting on like an exhibition, for example, all the way through to working out how they can start turning what they do into a business. It's all free advice. They give really, really good guidelines and helpful assistance to make sure that you, as a creative, are able to get the most out of what you do. Creative Northland, highly recommend them. Check them out. So with the exhibition concept and idea, it's interesting just sort of listening to you talk, and you talk about doing these clay shapes and being hopefully what could be an unlimited size, but then like fabric and stuff like that. Couldn't you just incorporate the two together?
Like fabric in the clay?
Why not?
Well, it would burn out when you cook it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And that's why I do a podcast, people.
It could be like...
Clearly I learned nothing from Rod and Wendy. Well, but to be fair, Wendy said that there was such a thing as paper clay, and I asked her what that was, and she said it's paper. And clay, I would have thought that paper would also burn as well.
Well, I would assume so. I don't actually know anything about paper clay, but I'd assume so.
Apparently it doesn't. Yeah, go figure. Okay, all right. So, when's this exhibition happening?
I don't know. I haven't booked it. It's a conceptual idea at the moment.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Rayburn House, expect a call from Ashley Ellis sometime in 2024. Because see, that gives you like 6 months and then whatever amount of time as well. No pressure. They do book quite a bit in advance, though. So,
True.
So you might reach out to them in January and they say, well, we can schedule you in for December.
Will you let me draw on your walls?
Yeah. Well, I think it is New Zealand's... it is Whangarei's oldest house. I'm not too sure how well that would go down.
I had to vacuum the walls at the court. I was vacuuming the charcoal off the walls. And there was these big grey stains, and then I wiped it with some fabric, and the whole wall was grey.
Yeah.
And then I had to go and do 3 layers of white paint. It was
a
mission. Yeah.
Okay, maybe Post-its.
Yeah, true. Cover the whole wall in Post-its.
Yeah, really adhesive Post-its. Okay, so at the start we did talk about, I did allude to the fact that you've you've undertaken a new creative endeavour that was, when we talked and when I heard about it, was just incredibly left field, but then at the same time actually kind of made a lot of sense the more I thought about it, much like your Neptune paintings.
True.
See what I did there?
Yeah, I did.
I tied that in. You do tattooing.
Yes.
Now, we're not talking about the dunk, dunk, dunk tattoo guns. We're talking traditional, the shit's going to hurt. What is it called? What is the style that you do?
Well, it's hand poke tattoo, so it's
what is hand poke tattoo?
Manual tattooing, so there's no electricity.
Right.
I have the needle.
Yes.
And I dip it into the ink, and then I go around the stencil that's on your skin of the design.
Right.
So it's just...
Yeah, like prison tattoos?
Yes. So it's like... Well,
Producer Andrew, quiet in the cheap seats, please.
I think they use electricity in prison anyway.
I think they do.
Right, they might use batteries. I have no idea.
They do.
Don't know.
I haven't been, so I can't say. I haven't enjoyed these stunning holiday facilities at Narfa Park. Excuse me. So when I think of a hand poke, because that's what it's called, hand poke, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Stick and poke, hand poke, manual tattoo.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think of the traditional Māori or Samoan or island tattoos, where you've got the tool gets dipped in the ink, and then some dude goes.
Yes.
And hits it into place.
That's not what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that we've cleared that up, because that shit hurts like a champion.
Have you had a tattoo like that?
No, I have seen friends get it though.
True.
And I've seen a grown man reduced to tears. A very strong, muscular man who would mess anyone up in 50 paces, reduced to a blubbering idiot. So what is the process for hand poke, stick poke tattoos?
Well, it's not... the first kind of thing that I'll quelch, it's not more painful than a machine tattoo,
right,
by any means. So it's most of the people, I'm going to say 75% of the people that I've tattooed have said, who also have machine tattoos, it's less painful.
Really?
Yes. So I like to describe it as I'm tattooing at a 45-degree angle, inserting the ink with the needle just under the skin, couple layers deep. And so that's dot, 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 whereas the tattoo gun is tearing through the skin a continuous line and inserting ink as it does it. So think of it like a trench being dug out in your skin, whereas manual tattoo is inserting just underneath dot by dot, and then at that angle the skin is slightly translucent, so it appears to be like a solid black line. So it's like dots as opposed to tears, and that's why it heals so much quicker. It's less traumatic, it's less painful.
That explains a lot.
And then obviously, like, depending on the colour pigment that you use, the different tattoo pigments have smaller or larger sizes, like at the micro level within them, the actual pigment itself, and that can cause different levels of pain depending on what colour you're getting. So. Oh, right. Yeah.
So a traditional, because I mean, I've got three. I've got one on each leg, and I've got I guess a large one on my back. But like the black, so the black or dark green would hurt less than colour? Is that what you're saying?
No. So black pigment's quite large, so black line work hurts more than, say, getting green or blue colour in your skin.
Oh, okay.
I'm just speaking for hand poke.
Right, okay, yep. Which is obviously what we're talking about. We're talking about the hand poke.
But also the type of needle that's used. So for instance, colouring is often shading work. And so I'll use a shading needle as opposed to a lining needle, which is the outline of the design, which is most commonly black. I've never done coloured outlines.
Okay.
And so the line work needle... So you've got all tattoo needles, whether it's hand poke or machine done, you can have different formations of them. When you zoom in, there's lots of tiny needles on the one needle that you're using. So for instance, I use round liners to do the outlines of my work, and it's all the miniature needles are in a circular formation. So you've got 9 of them or 7 of them or 5 of them, depending on what size needle you're using.
Right.
Giving you the thinness or the thickness of the line. Okay. And they're very tightly packed together to make a solid line. Whereas shading needles, the needles, you can have the same amount, but they're more spread out. So the needle looks bigger, but it allows you to cover a bigger surface area quicker.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I remember... getting these years ago. This one on my leg here, funnily enough, is 30 years old.
30? Wow.
30, yeah. Older than Some people I know. And I remember going into Wellington and getting it done, and the tattooist saying to me, where do you want it done? And I told him, he said, like, okay, it's going to hurt. And he did the outlining, and the outlining really hurt. The shading was a lot quicker and less painful, except on the bone. Bone always sucks. Because it's, not as much chonk.
I like to tell people, because people say, oh, it's on the bone, it's going to hurt, which is true to some degree, but it's also where the nerves are. So it's wherever you're ticklish, like obviously you're ticklish on your ribs, you're ticklish under here, you're like wherever you're ticklish, where there's a higher concentration of nerves, that's where tattoos hurt more.
Right.
So it's not always just about the bone. So for instance, I've tattooed people on their elbow, and it's so bony, it should be a very painful place, but it's actually not that sore because it's not a tickly spot. You know what I mean? It's not a very sensitive spot.
Yeah.
So like that's a kind of a subtle misconception as well. I've learned through tattooing.
That actually leads very beautifully into my next question then. How much research did you have to do beforehand before you were like, right, Mum, come here?
My mum was slightly hesitant. She came in a bit later to get tattooed.
Yeah. I'd use Mum as an example. But whoever your first victim, guinea pig was.
Fair. Well, I tattooed myself first.
Okay,
so
right.
I can understand exactly what this feels like, what different depths of tattooing feels like, what the right depth is, what needle spacing to do, where on the body it kind of hurts. So my partner had always said, I want to be your first tattoo. And I took him so literally, more literally than I think he thought I was going to. I hadn't tattooed fake skin. I hadn't tattooed myself at that point. So I was like, right, well, I've got all this tattoo equipment now. I feel like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm ready. You do want to be my first tattoo? You said so. And he said, okay, righto. And so he laid down. I didn't even have a tattoo bed at that point. So he was on the floor, laying there in my studio. I hadn't picked up a tattoo needle at this point.
Yeah.
Never held one. I didn't really know. I was panicking. I was trying to do all the logistical steps in my head. Like, I need to get gloves on at this point. I need to lay this down. I need to put the Vaseline here at this point. There was a lot going on, really, because I hadn't done it at all.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to do a simple sun. He'd chosen a sun and he wanted a moon inside of it. And I was like, we didn't end up doing the moon inside of it, just stopped at the sun. It was a circle with straight lines coming out of it. Very basic.
Okay, right.
And I was like, right, this is my opportunity to practice doing straight lines, solid lines. I had no idea how deep to go, like I in the sense that I theoretically knew how deep to go, but practically I'd never done it before.
Right,
so he was my first practice. And he was in excruciating pain for a lot of it, to the point where we didn't do the moon in the middle.
Okay.
I was going too deep, some was too shallow, the stabs weren't like close or far, it was all over the show. Later on, once I actually had practiced more, I made a post on community pages on Facebook. I was like, right, I'm learning how to tattoo. I have done no tattoos before. I want some people to sacrifice parts of their skin so I can practice on you guys and build up some kind of tattoo portfolio.
Sacrifice?
And I had hundreds of people message me. They're like, pick me.
You did.
Yeah, and it was amazing. There were so many people. And then they all booked in, and I went out and bought a diary so I could like write in all these different names and set up a Calendly system. And then so after that tattoo with my partner, I then started tattooing myself, and I was like, okay, this made it a lot easier. I could feel what it felt like. And
at this point, with you practicing on yourself, are you looking like Machine Gun Kelly?
So I was going to do a lot of tattoos on myself.
That's what I would expect, right? That's what you would think.
Yeah, but then my partner was like, voice of reason. He's like, you've got a finite canvas. Who knows how long you're going to be tattooing for? You're going to want to do a new tattoo every like progression you get to in this journey, which you want to mark with a tattoo on yourself. Like, you don't want to, in your first week of learning how to tattoo your whole body, because that's going to frustrate you in the future. So I was like, right, that's very sound advice. I'll just do one for now. He's like, do one every few months. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. So that's when I was like, I need other humans to practice on if I can't do it on myself then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you could end up looking like the dude from Memento with just random shit tattooed everywhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I could have formulated like the English essay, any reason why that meant something to me at that time. So I had to really put self-control on the cards there. Yes.
Now, you started tattooing, was only a few months ago, right?
About 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember seeing on Facebook, because that's primarily where you're sort of the most active, yeah?
For this, yeah.
For this, that, you would see every day.
Yes.
It'd be like, thank you to this person for, allowing me to do this, for being gracious enough, and all of these very cool things. It was like, holy shit, you're actually really having a crack at it.
Yes, yeah. I was remember what I said before about all my attention and all my energy goes into what I'm focusing on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how long that stretches for. So,
but it was such a... it's interesting because, you've been doing it for 4 months and you had that initial run of a good 2-3 months where it was just
3 a day.
Yeah. And they just kept coming.
Yes.
And coming. And now you've got the... embroidery stuff and you've
what kind of happened there was I was doing koha tattoos, so I was releasing a new 200 new tattoo designs every single month, and I would have a page of koha designs, and then as the months went on I moved away from koha and started introducing categories of $100, $120, and they're getting more and more complex designs coming in. And I think I burnt through the clientele of people wanting a tattoo in whangarei, that came to want a hand-poke tattoo from me, and they were all getting the koha designs. So once I'd gone through 3 months and I had tattooed, at that point, about 70 people, that was kind of the initial pool that were ready to get inked. And then it started dribbling off a bit more. But now what's happening is it's word of mouth from those people who came in for koha, and people are emailing me and messaging saying, are you the one doing hand-poke tattoos? Some people are coming to my studio in person and saying, hey, I've seen this design. Can you put this one on hold for me? I want to book this in. And now I've got people getting their 3rd and their 4th tattoos. So it's more turning into this, what I call Saturnian slow longevity by less. So it's not as this fiery, impulsive, quick, here is everything all at once. It's more like, okay, this can be sustainable if it's 1 or 2 every week. As opposed to 3 a day.
Well, I've got a bit of a surprise for you and for our viewers and listeners at home. Producer Andrew has volunteered to get a tattoo right here
amazing.
Today. Let's go to the... No, I'm kidding, everyone.
Well,
I have 0 tattoos.
I'm going to be tattooing at Beagle Radio on this Sunday, so if you want, just, courtyard sessions at Beagle Radio on Sunday.
I know people who might though, so...
Producer Andrew's like, that's a hard pass. No, and I am kidding, everyone. If anyone would be getting tattooed, it would probably end up being me. No, my luck.
Hold me down.
Yeah, book me in. Yeah, and here are the restraints. So with the tattooing, is that something that you could see yourself sort of leaning into more, or do you think it's one of these things where you're you have that initial burst and then a year or two later you're kind of well, I'm on to my next thing.
What I find with my jack of all trades, master of none, is all of these different mediums, they don't disappear. None of them disappear. Some of them, they ebb and flow. So at one point painting was very large and monumental, and at one point clay was large and monumental, and then painting shrunk, and now clay has shrunk and something else. But they never disappear. They'll always cut that skill that I've spent in that time where I focused all my energy onto the learning that skill, even to just the extent that I have, that'll always be with me, and that'll always integrate and come back in at some point. And I've only had, say, 2 years in this art journey so far of experiencing that, but for me it seems like a lot of things happen in a very short space of time, and I've already seen how things ebb and flow. So when I zoom forward 10 years into the future, I've got no idea how it will manifest. So I've got a long-term goal at the moment to build a clay house with my partner, and that's an example of a long-term planning where I'm integrating one medium which will also integrate other mediums that I've learned to take forward with me, and I have no idea how they'll all manifest, but it's just keeping on with the interest with working with these different mediums, and then I see it as that interest is taking me forward through time into the future, but I have no idea how it'll pan out.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, as I was alluding to with Sean before, you get people that kind of, they kind of find their niche and they're very good at it and they can stay in there for years.
It's kind of for instance, if I went travelling in the future, hand-poke tattooing is a skill that I can take with me anywhere I go, and that's a potential income source, but also a way that my style of art can spread across ways. That's not taking all of my painting supplies and a big easel. It's more compact and manageable, and it's more catered for a bigger range of people. More people have been buying tattoos than original paintings, so it's like people would rather have my art on their skin than painting on the wall. So it's just all these different mediums cater for different people, and I think that's quite a unique and special thing.
It also caters for different price points as well.
Exactly, yeah. Yes.
You know, not everyone's got $400-500 to splash on
a
Ash Ellis original, but dropping a hundy on a hand poke,
and then you've got it forever.
Original, and it's going to stay with you
exactly
until you have regrets and then get it laser tattooed off.
We'll get it covered with another one.
Yeah, it's just a cover-up job. So. For me, I think the whole impetus for getting you back in was really the hand poke stuff, because we've obviously had a very diverse range of guests on, but we haven't had a tattooist. And when producer Andrew and I were sitting down trying to work out who could we get on the show, and when we were right in its inception, he actually said tattooist was one of them, and we've tried to get tattooists in, but they're very reclusive.
Yeah.
So if you're a tattooist and you tattoo full time, we would love to have you in the seat. Don't be shy, say hi. So what does the rest of 2023 look like for you then?
Well, I'm really going hard on this clay house idea, so that requires getting land, which requires money.
Yes,
so
unfortunately.
Yeah, I've been going through the process of having different interviews for different jobs. So working on the clay house idea, working on the getting money idea at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be, honestly, I can't say what's going to happen for the rest of the year, but at the moment, that's what I'm pushing energy into.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you, as someone who's been creative without having the often large financial burden of having to worry about money, do you think that you would be able to find a balance between art and commerce?
Yes. So for me, I think it's super important that with the amount of energy I have, I put it out in creative means. So I'll always be drawing ready for the next month tattoo release, or I still have dreams of my paintings or clay sculptures that I make, which I have to make. It feels like a shame if I don't use that opportunity that's come through.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I'm always thinking about what I'm going to be making next. I can't turn that off or turn it on when I want it. It's just something that I feel like I have to be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And look, that does make a lot of sense, because essentially you're someone that has to. You've always struck me as a person that has a propensity for creation, whatever that form may be. And it might. It's not necessarily what's the. Man, how do I say this without it sounding... Okay, so I'm going to say something, and I don't mean it to sound mean.
Go for it.
It's not, but it's kind of the only thing I can think of at the moment. You're focusing on something that is your flavour of the month.
Yeah.
This is a thing that's got all of your focus at the moment now.
Yeah.
In 3 months' time, something else might have all of your focus instead. So then ultimately I guess you're going to be someone that will always be evolving, because even if, I could imagine things being cyclical. I don't know why. Producer Andrew, I seem to be whipping out the big words tonight. I'm not entirely too sure. This is obviously the quality of the guest. With the, you might end up with 13... 20 different disciplines, but I imagine at some point you'll come back round.
It always happens. Yeah. And I think seeing that journey will be interesting, because you're painting, pottery, tattooing, the embroidery stuff, what was the just
other
drawing,
one? Drawing
illustration,
in general, illustration. You've got 5 that you can do.
Yeah.
What else comes out
They
next?
all feed into each other though as
They
well.
do.
Even with the colour work and the tattooing, I'm applying the same painting techniques, just with the tattooing ink onto the skin.
Yeah.
So I'm still rendering the designs the exact same. The illustrations are still the exact same. It's just a different process of getting it down onto a different
absolutely
medium.
So I think for anyone that's watching, people that are watching and listening, I would highly recommend following Ashley's Facebook page, because it's going to be interesting to see, because where she was last year when we first met you was all about art.
Yeah.
Art. Painting. Now is tattoo, with a few other things smattered in there for a little bit of goodness.
Yeah.
So where you'll be at, say, the end of the year might be somewhere fundamentally different.
So I'll always come back to the astrological lens and say that
Yes.
the planets are moving, the transits are happening, and I'm being pushed exactly where I'm meant to. So it's been a solid year and a half of art, full time, every day. All I'm thinking about is art. And now it's getting more into, okay, you need to be saving some money for a future endeavour that's coming up, which will be art inspired, but
Yes.
that I can feel that's where I need to be turning my attention at the moment. So that's happened for a reason, but now this is beginning to happen for a reason, and I just have to trust where we're going with that.
And that's going to be a huge part of it, right?
Exactly.
Is trusting the journey.
Yes, and I can see all the transits happening, so that's what I'm just observing and trusting and like letting go of what I want to be doing and kind of just allowing myself to be led to some degree by this system that I do follow.
So, on that note, Ash, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with us again.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's been so cool. I feel like I know you a lot more than what I did after the first one.
Nice.
Just very,
Okay.
very cool. I think we've gone a lot deeper this time as well, which is
Cool.
great. Everyone make sure you check out the Facebook page. Really, really good. Keep an eye out. Ashley Ellis, thank you very much for coming in and sitting down with us at the Northland Artist Conversation. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. It's been fun.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, there you are, everyone. Ash Ellis, as I promised, something really, really different. Hand-poke tattoos. When she sort of first told me about it, I guess, as it says in the podcast, as I say in the podcast, I guess I envisaged the very traditional Māori, Samoan, Tongan, Fijian, the islander type of tattooing with the stick and the hammer. And I thought that, because originally when she said it, she said stick and poke. And I think that's kind of where I put the two together. I was like, oh, wow, I wonder what that is. And, as I said, I've seen a mate get it done. Looks unbelievably painful and something I will not consider doing. I mean, I say not, but I think we've all got a price. For the right amount of money, I probably would. But yeah, she talks about how it goes for her. She goes into a bit of the research that she did. It was just really cool. It was like super in depth, and she's obviously put a lot of thought into it. I flicked my camera now. If you have seen Ash's first podcast and you've watched this one, we sort of talked about it briefly as I was walking her back to her car, because it's very, very cold and very dark. She is a lot more extroverted than what she was. And by her own admission, she was very introverted when she first came on. Nervous. A lot of our guests are. So, for her to be comfortable and sit down and just talk unencumbered by anything and not feeling the nerves or anxiety that some of the guests experience was actually really cool. So, we will definitely look at getting more people back on. It's really, really cool. We'll get, definitely going to get a few others because, it's interesting sort of kind of being on the, periphery of seeing all these artists. So what happens is when we get someone on, we'll obviously try and follow them on their social media if they've got it. So Facebook and Instagram or YouTube, usually, right? So we kind of get to follow what they've been doing and people post all these things and you see all these really cool little milestones for them come up and they have these achievements. And it's like, that's a pretty cool achievement. We should definitely talk about it. So, if you've been on the podcast before and you've had a really cool milestone or something you want to talk about, please get back in touch with us. We would love to hear from you. And it'd be really cool to sit down and, find out what's been going on. I've got one particular former podcast guest that I'm actually looking forward to getting in and sitting down with. So, where can everyone find all these amazing podcasts and all the social media work that we do? Well, you can find us for visuals. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Northland Artist Conversation. For audio podcasts, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. All. Hello. Nope, not hello. Sorry. Again, I'll start that again. Northland Artist Conversation. What a plonker. Producer Andrew, I think I got slightly ahead of myself. Yes, I did. Because what I was meant to say is that if you've been a guest on before and you want to come back on, we would love to have you. But if you also know someone that you think would be a great guest on the show, reach out to us by emailing hello. See, that's that part there. Hello at northlandartistconversation.co.nz. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And we've also got a Patreon page as well. We're currently looking at redoing it at the moment. There's a couple of people I need to get in touch with to sort of throw a few ideas around because they do Patreon really, really well. So, we'll definitely be trying to work with them to figure out where we can improve, basically. So at the moment, we've got two tiers. We've got the $5 a month, which is cup of coffee, and then we've got our second tier, which is $20 a month, that we've called Coffee Addict, and that gets you a few extras along the lines of like a shout out, what guests are coming up, and if you've got a question that you'd like us to ask our artists that we have come on, you just reach out to us that way, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to thank our three Patreon supporters. I'm going to thank Dr. Lauren Roach. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Or former Dr. Lauren Roach, not doctor anymore. We're going to thank Michael Boter. Still the man, the myth, the legend. He's someone that I'm going to definitely try and come back in because he's had some very cool things happen. And the effervescent, I think I say that word a lot to describe her, but the effervescent Maggie Coco. Maggie, thank you so much. All three of you, thank you so much for supporting us. It really does mean a lot, means the world. And you can support us one of two ways. You can either go to Google and type in Patreon, that's Patreon. You can then go to the top right-hand corner, simply create an account, and then search Northland Artist Conversation. Pick the tier you want to support and then go from there. Easy as. The even easier way to do it is to go www.patreon.com/Northland Artist Conversation, create an account, pick your tier, go from there. It doesn't get any easier. I'm going to throw them all wide. So yeah, we've been doing this now for over a year. We're very, very stoked. We're going to start putting a few plans in place. For something a little bit more special, something a little bit special. I'm not going to talk about it too much at the moment, but let's just say I've reached out to a few people to see if it could be possible, and some of the feedback I'm getting is, yes, it could be. So, I will leave that little tantalising nugget there. I think as we go on with some of the podcasts, I'll sort of elaborate a little bit more, but it is very, very cool. Other than that, it's cold, man. It's cold. Like, we're in the studio and my knees are cold. Don't know why I felt the need to say that, but my knees are cold. And it is what it is. It's winter. Roll on spring. We've had the shortest day of the year. Roll on spring. Roll on summer. I look forward to the sweltering heat where we have the fan on. No, who am I kidding? It's the beaches. Love Northland's beaches. They're golden, amazing. So, on behalf of everyone here from the Northland Artists Conversation, thank you so much for sticking with us. And if you've joined us and you've just discovered us recently, thank you very much. It's lovely to see you. To our communications manager, Marino, who is on holiday, hope you're enjoying yourself. My name is Mark Kelly. Behind the cameras and computer is producer Andrew McKenzie. Thank you very much for watching Northland Artists Conversation. We will see you guys real soon.